Welcome to Andrea Lake 101, the making of a billionaire. You guys, one of the questions I get all the time is like, how did Justin Bieber play in your living room? And I'm always like, yeah, good question. Good question. How the fuck did I start the Winston House? Really good question. Today we're going to have that answer, and I am going to explain how it is that not just Justin Bieber, but also Miley Cyrus and Cody Simpson, Hazier, the Chainsmokers, Ed Sheeran, and on, Billie Eilish, how they all played in my living room. Really good question. How the fuck do you start a music house in LA? Why do you start a music house in LA? How are those shows free? Because those shows were free. Kind of what's next with building community for me. So we're going to rewind back. If you've been watching the show for a while, then you know the extensive detail of the backstory. But if this is your first episode, here's a quick little recap. So I became an entrepreneur in 1999. Don't worry, this is like 30 seconds. And I was really isolated. I didn't know a lot of other entrepreneurs, and I went to zero in 2008 with the economic crash in 2008. And that really is when a lot of these community-based organizations like Summit and TED and EO and a bunch of other organizations where entrepreneurs can sort of find each other and connect with each other, they were just baby barely starting in about 2008. And I realized when I went through that downturn, like, wow, I didn't have anyone. I didn't have any kind of community that understood the really big swings that can happen as an entrepreneur. I was really, really alone and really isolated within it. And that was not fun. So I was just craving really meeting and putting together my people. I put together a small mastermind group with Jay Allard from Xbox and Dan Caldwell from Tap Out, Tina Wells from Buzz Marketing, and Cameron Johnson, who's a serial entrepreneur, so that we could connect with each other. But I didn't feel a real like community and belonging. I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the middle of fucking literal actual nowhere. Dan came out to Albuquerque to do something with Greg Jackson's camp in the MMA world. And there's a lot of very big training that goes on at high altitude for any type of professional athlete, and mixed martial arts is no different. And so Albuquerque is sort of one of the higher altitude towns that you can train in if you're an elite athlete, that also has like a city attached to it. So anyhow, Dan comes out and we go out to dinner, and he's like, Dan, my business partner who started Tap Out, Dan Caldwell, who will show up at the Winston House today in this story, when we started Mentor Mojo. Out of there, it's going to be a whole lot of stuff we're going to cover. So Dan comes to New Mexico in like about 2008, 2009, as everything is crashing while he is filming his television show, and says, Andrea, what the fuck are you doing? Why the fuck do you live here? I just took my girlfriend to Carlsbad last week. You need to live like in Carlsbad. And I was like, oh yeah, Carlsbad's cool, but I kind of like Encinitas better, which is a little south of there. He's like, fucking wherever, just not New Mexico. Like, how do you live here in the middle of nowhere? And I'm not even joking. It was like 2 or 3 weeks later that I put my house on the market. I was like, I really do need to move back to Southern California. I am way too young and doing way too many things to be living at the outskirts in a tiny little teeny tiny town in New Mexico. So I moved back to Southern California and kind of put a lot of time and attention back into Sticker Junkie for a couple years. But in about 2013, I had been back in San Diego for a few years, and I just was ready to move north to LA. I had been spending a ton of time in Venice Beach. I had been very integrated with all of the business communities like EO and like Summit and like TED, and all of the different communities had way more of a presence back then in Los Angeles, and I wanted to contribute to that. So it's really important to understand how much I was craving community for why it is that I do all of the side stuff that I do, where I'm like hosting these potlucks or helping TED to fill out some more interesting community members, or helping Summit with recommendations for more interesting community members, or getting people populated over to an event on Necker Island. It's really just because I super duper crave a lot of connection and just a group of peers. Because as you grow and expand as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of logic out there that's like, oh, you want to connect with somebody that's way more successful than you. And like, that's fine. That's really great too. But what you really want is your peer group who all are scaling businesses at the same time. Because then you're just connected to each other. And as you have success and rise, you all have success and rise because you're feeding each other business or opportunities or deals, like your friend that is creating the, affiliate program that puts all the influencer that connects all of them to a product. Or another friend has like an agency where they do Google ad buys, or another friend, and on and on and on, has a creative agency or a PR firm or a sticker company, promotional products company. We all sort of help each other, and people do business with people that they like. So my friends buy stickers from me. And if they're not, I make sure they switch over and that they are now that I'm back in the company. So after the very first Summit at Sea in 2011, where it is just magical. It is a cruise boat full of entrepreneurs who are up to really big things with their lives. And I'm connecting with this whole new friend group. And it is feeding my soul in more ways than I even can express. And I already had a lot of physical freedom from my companies at that time. Like I could travel a lot, and the day-to-day operations were taken care of because we do own really big production facilities for stickers. I mean, I don't even know how many stickers we print right now, maybe like 60, 70 million a year. And so we make those, we manufacture all of those in San Diego. And I was able to step away a lot and travel like to San Francisco, to Austin, to Chicago, New York, just all over the country once I got into Summit, and meet and connect with all of the entrepreneurs that I have met through that community. And I would spin up these little potlucks that I've talked about before that I still do to this day, where I just say, hey, does anybody have a nice space that we can use to host a potluck? So I was doing this a lot back in 2012. And I started hosting my event, Sedona Magic, where people were coming in from all over the world to do like a really, really highly well put together, very highly curated event in Sedona, Arizona, where this all is important to how the Winston House started, where we would do, you know, hiking and a vulnerability workshop that I teach, and the hijacking that I've talked about before, which is really just like a way to drop deep into conversation with other participants when you're at a conference. And on top of those icebreakers and workshops and things, I would fly out like a Michelin star chef. Haru Kishi was the lead chef for Summit Series. Previous to that, he worked for 10 years in Gordon Ramsay's kitchens, and him and his twin brother are both Michelin star level chefs. Haru and Goye Kishi, they actually started Proper Sandos in the Proper Hotel in Austin, Texas. So go check out their newest restaurant if you happen to be in Austin. This is not paid. I just really love them. And Haru used to fly out, and he's got this huge personality. He's like Japanese and French, and he's hysterical and would just bring life to the party. And when people came in to my events, like there's a sign up board so people can go to sign up to assist Haru in the kitchen and get like a little cooking class while they actually are chopping the vegetables for that night's dinner. And I would have 75 people come to my house in Sedona. We would put up like 2 top tables all over the house and all over the deck. And it was feeding my soul. But that was just one weekend out of the year, and like the most fun weekend for sure. But I wanted it to last for longer. So then I started doing what I called Sedona Work Week twice a year, where people would just fly in for like 10 days and get Airbnbs, or they could crash and do a slumber party at my house. And we would just all do work days together. So we'd be banging out work during the day. People would peel off and do little meetings with each other and do little mastermind brainstorms with each other about any pain points that they had within their company. We would exchange tips on like time management and workflow, HR, like whatever, fundraising, whatever people were doing, scaling on social media, just all of the different things that we all were dealing with in our companies. There was like this brain trust of people, amazing, extraordinary entrepreneurs who started some of the biggest companies. Like the guys from Hootsuite would come out, and Heroku, and just lottery.com, a ton of other big, huge, humongous brands of people who I just knew, a lot of people that were on the C teams of those companies or were founders of those companies, of lots of big companies, so many big companies, Soma Water, Listen Headphones. I can't even remember all of the big companies of people who can't combat flip-flops who would come out to these events. And once I got a taste of the work week, the guys who had built Factory Zero in San Francisco had come out to one of like my Sedona work weeks, and I started talking with them. And my good friend David Hassel, who I've talked about on here before, who's the founder of 15Five, came to one of the events and he was living in Factory Zero at the time. And he was like, hey, next time you're in San Francisco, like, let us know. We have this multiple bedroom house. I think they had three different houses in San Francisco at that time, where each house had like whatever, 7 rooms, and they would host potlucks similar to like what I would do and host dinners with all of the most fascinating people in tech in San Francisco and have this whole community. They had like a meditation yoga room. They had all of this very cool stuff within this house. And a bunch of entrepreneurs would move into the house, but they had to give up a little tiny piece of equity to live in a lot of houses like this. I don't remember exactly how factory worked, but you would give like, I don't know, 1/4% or 0.5% equity stake to the incubation house in order to live there, plus pay rent, usually out of whatever round you had just raised. Because these were a lot of tech people, so they had just raised, 2, 3, 4, 10, 20, $30 million round, and part of it would cover the CEO staying at this house where all kinds of salons were hosted, all kinds of huge people within the tech industry would come in and give talks. And it was just like this really lovely space to be around, and I started staying there when I was in San Francisco, and I was like, I really am craving this level of community in my life, where whenever I'm in a city for 2 weeks, I can stay in this place and meet all these cool new people. Because when you have 7 rad people living in a house together, like you're going to have a bunch of interesting, cool people that roll in and out of that house. And I wanted that, but I didn't want to live in San Francisco. I wanted, first of all, to be closer to my companies, and my companies were based out of San Diego. But secondly, I was ready to be out of San Diego. So I really wanted to live in Venice Beach. So all of these things are sort of rolling around in my mind of like, what would my most ideal living situation be? Now, don't worry, we are coming to the part where Justin Bieber plays in our house, but this is the lead up to how it got created. I'm just letting my mind wander about like, what do I really want? Where do I really want to live? And one of my good friends had a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful home in Venice Beach and had a spare room and was traveling just all the time at that time. So he gave me a spare key to his house just to like use it whenever I wanted. And he also had this gorgeous office space in this series of row houses, which are like very common in Brooklyn, very common in New York, very common in San Francisco, but very, very uncommon in Southern California, where it's just like a series of 7 units that are together in this really massive, very long building that are broken out into individual houses, but each house would sort of be like a mansion, like a 7-bedroom house. And it was slated for co-live work. So you could either live there or work there or both. But out of all of the other, I think there were 7 units in it, we ended up getting a space in this place, and we were the only ones that actually lived there. Everybody else just only was an office. That worked out great for us later, but I'm skipping ahead. So I'm staying at my friend's house and I go to his beautiful office and I'm like, holy fucking shit, this is gorgeous. Like, how much is this? I want something like this. He's like, yeah, it's expensive. I'm like, yeah, I bet it is. And he had a really big tech startup, so no skin off of their nose. And I'm just thinking about all these things. So as all of those things are percolating of sort of like, where do I want to move next? I am taking a summer road trip. And on this summer road trip, it's going to be like 2.5 months long. And the first stop is Summit outside in Eden, Utah. So that was one of the coolest events that Summit ever did. They had this remote mountaintop in Eden, Utah that had like nothing on the side of the mountain that we were on. It was totally undeveloped. Summit was trying to put together a land deal to actually purchase that land, or maybe they had just acquired the land. I don't really recall. I think they just bought the land. And they set up like a pop-up temporary city very similar to Burning Man, but like a much more vetted audience than Burning Man. It was invitation only for a bunch of entrepreneurs and people who just are at the top of their game to go to this like very luxurious, very luxe camping trip called Summit Outside. And there were like beautiful, beautiful formations that was sort of like a glamping like tent, but with a real structure around it, and like a wood base and a bed and like little very cute end tables and stuff, but sort of very rustic and very natural looking. And they had a puppy pit there. That's right. That's where I got my little Rico Suave. So I always had a pass with my old dogs, Elvis and Priscilla. Within the whole Summit community, I was always able to take them places with me that sort of other dogs weren't allowed at because my dogs were so well behaved. So when Summit started spending a lot of time in Eden, Utah, they got this big, beautiful house there called the Lake House right on the water, and no dogs were allowed except for my dogs were allowed because they were so well behaved. Summit would be hosting like a 200-person dinner, steak dinner, and my dogs, Elvis and Priscilla, would lay on their dog bed and not move until everybody was done eating, and I told them they could get off the bed. I don't even know how they were so well trained. They were such good dogs. Rico is a lab, and he would be all up in someone's grill. If somebody had steak, he'd be like, "My mommy doesn't keep meat in the house, and I need to eat that right now. Will you share it with me, please?" But Elvis and Priscilla were really good, really well behaved. And I called Summit in advance and said, "Hey," Elvis had already passed away, so I said, "Hey, can I bring Priscilla with me to this camping thing? I don't like to leave her alone." And they said, "No, actually, on this one, Andrea, we're just gonna have to say no. First of all, it's a really gonna be a rough environment for pets. You know, we don't have a lot of like the amenities that we would normally have. We're not like in a hotel where you're going to be able to have help. It's rustic, it's outside. There are wild animals. Obviously, it's up on a mountaintop, and it's also going to be loud because there's a huge sound stage." And I was like, "Oh man," because I really like to travel with my dog. But I was like, "Well, whatever." So I get to Summit outside to the mountaintop in Eden, Utah. They're driving us up in these shuttle vans. So I get to the top, and the very first thing I see is this woman holding a puppy. And I was like, "What? I thought that we couldn't have dogs." And her boyfriend, Brett, is standing right behind her, who's one of the founders of Summit, who I had known for a long time. And he knew that I was going to get another dog. And he knew that my dogs live the best life in the history of ever because they're never left at home. They never leave my side. They go hiking every day. My dogs really do live a charmed life. The whole reason why I work and am successful is so that Rico can like live a good life, is my joke, but it's kind of true. Farmer's dog is not inexpensive. And so I get out of the van and I'm the first one out, and I was like, "What? You can bring dogs?" And Brett is behind her and he's like, "No, it's just a puppy pit. Nobody else was allowed to bring their dog." Like, I'm like, "Okay, cool." And so I'm petting this little puppy and I am holding it and I'm like, "Oh my God, I've been looking for a new dog." And like, I'm wanting this dog immediately. I'm like, immediately, like, this is my dog. And his girlfriend is in front of me and pulls the dog back and goes, "Actually, we're gonna adopt this dog." And I was like, oh, I was immediately like crushed, like heartbroken. But whatever, there's like a whole puppy pit. I'm gonna go check out the rest of the litter and whatever. So I'm sure there's plenty of dogs. But I'm really sad because she goes, "This one's the alpha of the litter." And I was like, "Well, if I get a dog, I do want to get the alpha of the litter if I can." And when she says, "We're adopting him," Brett is standing behind her going, "No. No, we're not." Now, for the people on audio, I am saying that out loud, but he literally is just like shaking his head and mouthing in the words like, "No, no, we're not." To indicate to me that they're not going to adopt a dog, which sounds way more right because they were traveling all over the world. Like I was like, "I don't even know how you're going to keep a dog." Long story short, the woman comes up to me and just hands me little baby Rico and says, "I guess we're not going to adopt him after all. And I know that he's going to have the best life with you. Like, I know how your dogs get treated, and he's just going to have the best life. And here you go." And that, my friends, is how I got Rico. So I go over to the puppy pit to finalize the adoption with Rico, and I'm supposed to leave Rico back with the puppy pit until whatever for 2 more days. And I was like, "No fucking way," because I can see already what's happening, which is that every other attendee has their eyes on Rico because he is obviously the cutest one in the litter, but also the alpha of the litter. So I just fill out the paperwork and I go, "No, that's okay. I'm gonna hang on to him. I'll bring him back up here to play with his siblings during the day, but he's gonna be staying with me from this moment forward." And she's like, "Oh my God, are you sure? Is that okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's totally fine." Because I just knew if I put him back into that pen, somebody else would just like snag him real quick. Because it would have been very possible, is all I'm saying. And the lovely thing about adopting at an event like that is that a bunch of people I knew adopted Rico's litter mates. So a bunch of us just had all of the dogs from that litter. And from that moment forward, I was doing different things over the course of that event because I had a new puppy with me everywhere, and I was, like, training him, and I immediately started, like, potty training and doing his little hike training on the trails. It was so much fun, and of course, I was immediately in love with Rico. He's just the bestest boy ever. But as a result, I'm just taking more hikes and taking more time away from the very loud environment because all of a sudden I have this little puppy with me, and that is A-O-fucking-K by me. I know a lot of people in this group by this point. I knew at least 2 or 300 people that were at that event, so I just kept pulling off with my friends and little hijacks and reconnecting with people. And when I very first had gotten to this event, had gotten to Summit Outside, I actually showed up 2 days early to stay in a hotel that Summit had coordinated for attendees that wanted to fly in earlier and just see each other because there were so many groups of really tight friends at this point, and so many of us wanted to, like, help to way more integrate the community with each other and just introduce all of our friends to each other, and other people wanted to introduce their friends into the community. So I go to stay at this gorgeous hotel in Salt Lake City. I think it's called like the Great American or something. And there's almost nobody from the event there yet, except for me and one of my friends, Nicole, is co hosting a dinner that night for like 100 people. So we're there way early, prepping the kitchen and getting everything ready to co host this 100-person dinner. And like I've mentioned on many, many podcasts, I really do attribute my ability and desire to connect a community to each other with a lot of my business success because people do business with people they like. And so if they come to my potlucks and they like coming to my dinners and then they need to get some promotional products, they're going to buy them from my company. And that doesn't matter if it's a chief marketing officer for one of the biggest beverage companies in the world or if it's somebody that owns a chain of dispensaries. Just people just do business with people that they like. So I'm putting together this 100-person dinner. I'm not getting paid for that. I'm just doing that because I'm going to be connected to everyone there. And then when you're the one that's standing up and giving the toast, and a lot of the attendees in the room, they don't know me yet, but from that moment forward, they do know me because I'm the person that just hosted the dinner and played little games and got them to talk one-on-one with their neighbors at the table and told them where the after party was going to be afterwards, etc. And so there's just a lot of goodwill that happens when you are going to a conference. Like you can do this because it will actually integrate you more deeply within whatever conference community that you're going to. So I get in really early and I'm sitting in the lounge and this kid comes up to me and I'm like, whatever, in my late 30s. And this kid's like super young. He's like 22 or something. And he goes, "Hey, are you here for Summit?" And I say, "Yeah, I am." And he goes, "I'm Corey McGuire, and I don't know anyone here." And I go, "Oh, well, it's your lucky day because I'm Andrea Lake and I know everyone here." And he laughs and I laugh and I invite him to the dinner that night. And then I had a seat open at my table, at my personal table of this like 120-person dinner. And this kid is so nice. And so I bring him into my personal table, which is like whatever, a 14-person table, and introduce him to my best homies at the table. And it's this fantastic dinner, and I'm making people swap seats with each course so that they get to meet a bunch of different people throughout the event, etc. And it's just like this really fabulous time. So, just like I mentioned, there's a lot of goodwill there. Corey is like, "Who the fuck is this? I need to know her," because he doesn't know anyone in the community yet. It is his very first event. He had been very last minute introduced to come into this community and literally only knew one other person there, Wayne Price, who happened to be a good friend of mine. And so we go to the after party. We're all there the next day at like a pool party, and I keep running into Corey. And so we're just casually saying hi, and I'm introducing him to new people every time I see him because I know that he doesn't know anyone, and I know that I know everyone. And so, because I've already been in this community for 3 years plus, I've traveled all over the country hosting potlucks with different people in each city. So I'm having this lovely reunion time, and then I adopt Rico. So I'm holding this little puppy, and I'm like, I really just want to go on a really long hike. We're at the top of this pristine, beautiful mountain, and they have cut these gorgeous trails with different, like a statue garden over here and a bunch of hammocks over here. But we don't know anything that's anywhere, and you would just be on this huge, humongous, multiple hour like hiking loop and then run into these little areas where you could just chill out in hammocks for a couple hours. So I run into Corey right after I adopt Rico, and he's like, "Oh, you got a dog?" And we're chatting, and I'm like, "Yeah, do you want to go on a walk with me?" He's like, "Yeah, heck yeah, let's go." So we end up, unbeknownst to us and unintentionally, we end up taking a 6-hour hike together. Neither one of us had planned to like go for 6 hours. And we're like talking about life and what's most important to us and what do we want next and how do we get to where we are right now and what are our dreams and all of these very fun things. And in the course of this 6-hour conversation, so Corey was asking me, like, what do you really want? And I said, I've been spending a ton of time at Factory Zero at the factory in San Francisco. And I really wish something like that existed in LA, but my companies are too inappropriately big to give up a percentage of equity to live in a house. Plus, they're product companies. They're not really structured that way. So I would like to have a house that I create that's like maybe a 7-bedroom house in Venice with a bunch of serial tech entrepreneurs. I will choose every person that lives there and I would choose every stick of furniture that goes in the common space. And Corey's like, well, why don't you just create that? Like, it doesn't seem like it'd be that hard for you to create. And I just said, okay, because I am so busy. I owned the exclusive sales rights on the merchandise for Minecraft and Blizzard Gaming at that point, and World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, all of these video gaming licenses. Plus, I also owned Sticker Junkie. Plus, I also was starting a new company that ended up being called Mentor Mojo. And I was like in the early days of starting that as well as writing that t-shirt company course. So I just was really busy. And I just told him that I'm like, I don't really have any time to dedicate to these things right now. And he said, well, what if I do all of the work? And I said, great. That would be great. I would do it for sure. And I would pick all the people that live there and I would, put the organizational structure into place. That'd be fantastic. And that is it. That is all. That is the whole entire conversation. That little 30 seconds right there. That is the entirety of the conversation during a 6-hour hike. So I like completely forgot that we had even had that part of the conversation because it was just such a tiny moment on this like very lovely 6-hour hike. And then it's over and I introduce him to somebody else when we get to the end of the trail. And then I don't talk to Corey again, except for he texted me and said, hey, I'm starting this music startup app. Do you know anybody in the music space? So I was like, yeah, actually, of course I do. So I introduced Corey to my friends, Sam Salisbury, who had been like I think he was at a big headphone company. I can't remember which one, and had a big, deep background in music. And Joe Stolte, who I think was at Microsoft at the time and ended up being like chief operations officer for Rob Dyrdek and then ended up starting like a bunch of companies, was at lottery.com. And now he has a bunch of his own companies. Um, and I did not keep track at all of what was happening after I made that introduction. I introduced them to each other. I said, these two can probably be really helpful to you. I'm out. Peace out. And just went and lived my life. And then it was about 6 or 8 weeks later, I get a phone call and it's Corey. And I haven't talked to him in the interceding 6 weeks, like at all. Even when I introduced him to Joe and Sam, I did it by text and there was no follow up. And I pick up the phone and he goes, okay. And I go, okay, what? And he goes, okay, I got the house. And I was like, what? He's like, the house in Venice Beach. Like I got the house. I have a 5-year lease, but like they won't, I'm a 22-year-old kid and I need someone like you to actually sign the lease. And do you actually want to do this together? And I said, yeah. I said, well, I get the best room, right? And he goes, yeah, you get the best room and you choose all the people. I said, cool. And I choose all the people. And then also I get to do 100% of the decorating of the common space. And he's like, yeah, for sure. And I was like, cool, let's go. So he gives me the address and it just so happens I'm in Venice at the time. I had been traveling nonstop. So it's weird that I was in Venice in the moment when he calls. And when he gives me the address, I'm at my friend's house who has the beautiful offices that I was telling you about. Well, spoiler alert, I show him the address and I said, isn't this the same address as your building? And he was like, yeah, that is our building. And that space is for rent right now. And it's nicer than our space. And I was like, what? So I immediately go down there, check it out. I'm like, it is a yes for me. It is an immediate yes. And all of a sudden we have the most beautiful, gorgeous mansion in Venice Beach, and it's 7 bedrooms, and it's just stunningly beautiful, and we have underground parking, which comes in as important later. And it's just lovely, and that is how the Winston House was born. So I call up all my friends, and I get Joe and Judy and Travis and Dylan and, everybody else, Jordy and Corey and I and Sam to move in to the house, and we're all paying, like, a lot for rent back then. It would be the equivalent of, like, 6 or $7,000 a month now. We're all paying $2,300, but that included rent and a cleaning service to come in twice a week because there's a lot of people living in the house. And we all just move in to this very idyllic house situation in Venice Beach. It's this 3-story tall, gorgeous, I mean, gorgeous space with like a 22-foot tall ceiling because right when you walk in the door, maybe it was 23 feet tall, there was no it was a 3-story house, but the first entryway went all the way up to the ceiling of the whole building. And then it was like this open staircase, and the second floor was completely open, so we built out this huge co-work space that people could come in and work, and then there were 7 bedrooms. So, immediately, it was just, like, the best vibe. I decorated it, like, super cute. I had my friend Ryan Henry Ward, who's a really well-known artist, come in and do this huge mural of these owls because I love his owls, and just set the place up to make it be the best Venice vibe that you could imagine. The color palette was like teal and gold and bright yellow and dark wood and steel. And it was the fucking coolest house. And one of our friends who actually was a showrunner for Survivor also just like loved to make furniture. So he made us like a 14-foot long dining table. And it just immediately became this gathering place for all of the entrepreneurial community in Venice, for everybody that was in Summit in LA, which was a huge, huge contingent of people in the entertainment industry that were in Summit series. And so everyone just started coming to our house for little gatherings because I would host these fun little things. Like we did a breakfast sandwich cook-off contest and then like a regular, I don't know, pizza cooking contest where we'd have a bunch of different people sign up and get all the things to give everyone a taste of a breakfast sandwich or whatever the little task was. We had one that was like the best grilled cheese cook-off challenge. I won that one. And I would do up little scorecards so people could like keep score and keep track of their favorites. And there would be little prizes. And we would just invite like 100 entrepreneurs over to come and do the tastings. And inevitably, a musician would just show up because we all had friends that were like pretty famous musicians and some degree of fame and but very talented always, and they would just play. And if like NQ came by, I went up to a very, very famous poet, and I went up to him once when he was at the house, and his name is Adam, and I was like, "Hey, Adam, do you wanna do a slam poetry thing right now? Because we built this little stage." And he was like, "Oh my god, Andrea, like, I don't have anything prepared." I'm like, I'm sure you've got this. I'm pretty sure you've got this." And he's like, "Fine," and we didn't know each other that well at this point. And he goes up on stage and is, like, bringing people to fucking tears, just, like, in the middle of nowhere and inspiring everyone. And so it sort of just became this thing that when we would host a thing, inevitably there would be like a singer who was just like mega talented and maybe on The Voice right now or on, on tour somewhere in a smaller way. And then it just really grew from there organically because as Corey and Sam and Joe started Rally Song, which was their music startup, and raised money for it successfully and started going with the app, they just kept meeting more and more famous people within the music industry until all of a sudden, um, Corey's old friend, Corey Harper, moved into the Winston House for a little while, and Corey's old friend, Jordy Detmeyer, moved into the Winston House for a little while. Well, Jordy was the tour manager for the Head and the Heart. So all of a sudden, we have all of these people who are in our ecosystem of just homies, of just friends, who know a lot of very well-known people in the music industry. So as Corey McGuire is getting more and more integrated with the music industry, he starts managing a couple of artists. I literally can't remember exactly who he was managing and who he just was friends with, but I believe he was managing another Corey, Corey Harper, and Cody Simpson at the time in 2013. Maybe he wasn't managing Cody, I don't really know the relationship, but what I do know is that Corey Harper and Cody Simpson were coming around a lot because they were doing some kind of business together. And my business partner, Corey McGuire, who I started the Winston House with, was doing business with Scooter Braun and a bunch of Scooter's artists. So all of a sudden, Justin Bieber is coming over and hanging out. And when they would be there were just was a stage and there were all these instruments around because it was becoming a music house. And so then Justin Bieber started playing at the music house. I actually think Miley Cyrus played first because she was really good friends with Cody Simpson. I don't know if they were dating at the time or not, but they were really close friends. And so then all of a sudden the word got out around the community of Venice that the coolest possible thing that you could do was get invited to go see a show at the Winston House. And the way that we did it was totally free. It was free to come. This house just only cost money. This house didn't make money when I was in it. It was not like a business when I was doing it. I just wanted a really tightly aligned community. I just wanted all my friends to live together and for them to bring their cool friends by and to host little potlucks and have sort of a centralized hub place where people in the town that I was living in knew that they could come and gather and it would be a nice vibe. And so we did like tons of board game nights. We put in a pull down projector so that we could have like movie nights. We just did fun shit all the time and just invited all the cool people that were around in Venice to come play with us. And we organized like cleanup day. Corey McGuire was really passionate about that. So on the days when the food trucks would come, I think it was like maybe the day after, we would do a cleanup walk around Venice just to clean up trash in Venice and put together little concert series in Venice. And in our house, the way that we would handle it is we would just invite people. We wouldn't charge them. We would put the word out that we were going to have a show that night and we would never say who was playing. So it would either be a very famous artist or it would be an up and comer who literally nobody knew who they were. But what you knew for sure it was going to be fun. It was going to be a good vibe. And people, we had it potluck style. So people were going to bring really good food in and you would just get to know a lot of other cool summit entrepreneurs in Venice Beach. That's how the Winston House started. And when the unknown artists played, some of the unknown artists, as I've mentioned in the podcast before, were like Billie Eilish. She played there, I think, like 4 times before she was famous, before Ocean Eyes like really hit hard in the charts. And she was a kid. She was like 13, 14 years old when she played at the Winston House. Ed Sheeran came and played, and he had did like I think it was the Grammys one weekend and the Super Bowl the next weekend and the Winston House that following Monday. Hozier came and played. Nobody even knew that Hozier was going to play because like what would happen is all these traveling musicians would just sort of hear of the Winston House and they'd heard from other musicians or from other people that they do business with in the music industry about the Winston House. So then when they were in town, they would just want to come by and check out what it was. And then when they saw how chill it was, how casual it was, how informal it was, Hozier just ended up jumping up on stage and doing a set one night. And I was so sad. I was so disappointed because I was out of town and I love Hozier. And to this day, I have still never seen him perform live. So that was like a bit of a miss on my end. As a matter of fact, I put the word out to Corey where I was just like, look, if Hozier ever comes to the house again, I will drive in. He's like, we had no notice, girl. I was so sad that you were in Sedona because we had no notice that he was going to come play. And it was just the fucking best vibe. But like a lot of the cool things that I've done or that have happened in my life, the degree to which it was completely, totally 100% not planned to go the way that it went is 100%. There was no thought at all whatsoever when I started the Winston House. It was just going to be a tech hub entrepreneur house. And like, I knew cool people would roll through, but I was thinking more like investors and other entrepreneurs and people who had started really big companies. Like, I wasn't thinking of musicians because that wasn't my world. But a lot of the local LA musicians just fell in love with the place because it also was a place where they could have community while simultaneously having privacy. Because when huge artists like Justin Bieber would come in, they could pull in downstairs into our underground parking garage and get up into the house without paparazzi really getting a bunch of clean shots. And so it was very easy for them to just come and be private and be around good people that just knew a lot of famous people. So it wasn't like daunting for them to just chill out and stay. And a lot of these famous musicians, they would stay in our quote guest room, which I am telling you, my closet at my house in Santa Fe was bigger than that guest room was. It was so tiny. It was such a tiny, tiny space. And you'd have some of the biggest artists in the world laying on a mattress on the floor in this teeny tiny little guest room. But it was just such a good vibe that a lot of people just wanted to be there. Plus, we had this killer, insane rooftop deck with like a view of the beach. And it just didn't get any better than that. So that was the Winston House. We did end up word got, like, too much out, so we had to start kind of restricting and pulling back how many invitations we would send because we ended up actually having to call the police on ourselves once because somehow it was a night that Justin Bieber was playing and word got out that he was there, and then all of a sudden, just the whole street on Electric Avenue, which is where the original, Venice Beach location was, got swarmed. But then when I lost the sales rights on Minecraft, when they got purchased, when Mojang, the parent company of Minecraft, got purchased by Microsoft, I really quickly was like, whoa, I don't think I'm going to be in LA anymore. I think like this time is up. And it was right after like way too many people were in my house, like hundreds of people were in my house. And I was like, look, you guys are all, because all the guys that I had populated to live in that house, they were all men, except for there was one married couple. And they were all maybe 10 to 15 years younger than I am. And I'm like, this is probably way more fun when you're in your mid 20s than when you're in your late 30s. I'm out. I am finito with living this way where I might just like come home and there's 1,000 people in my house. That is way too much for me. So I ended up leaving the Winston House. Yeah, like I don't remember exactly when it was, maybe 2016. And that is when Alejandro Reyes Knight, who is a fantastic guy who was a documentarian, I think he did like a Beatles documentary, or maybe it was a Rolling Stones documentary, and just a fantastic storyteller, fantastic videographer, fantastic photographer. He came and moved into the room that I previously had been living in the Winston House, and joined Corey into transitioning it from just like sort of this side project that Corey and Sam and Joe and I sort of spun up together in conjunction with Rally Song, and really turned it into an actual business where then they got incorporated and turned it into a real thing that charged admission and had these shows. And they bought another hotel. They bought like a vacant hotel in Venice Beach and moved the Winston House from its original location on Electric Avenue in Venice over to, I believe it was on Ocean Avenue in Venice Beach. And recently, very sadly, after many years and weathering the pandemic, which of course changed the whole live music industry, the Winston House very recently, a couple months ago, shut down its Ocean Avenue location, and the Winston House is no longer. But in its heyday, in its glory days, it was the place to be. And when I tell you that it really just was birthed out of a desire, my desire to have community around me. And then when I met Corey and he really shared that desire to build this community, I can't tell you how important it was to me, how many amazing business partnerships were formed just through different events that we would host there, or our like mimosa Sundays. It was just such a vibe. We would go to Jelena and have a mimosa and then go back to the Winston House, then go to like Pressed Juicery to get the best orange juice and then get really good Prosecco and make up mimosas. That was a pretty fun Sunday morning activity. And then like play board games with each other and just laugh our faces off and be so silly. It was such a fun, really good feeling time. And now that I'm living in a high rise for the first time that has a lot of really cool common spaces and I'm starting to host stuff again, I think I might reincorporate like some, maybe a little bit of live music and some board games and some more event nights because it just feels so good to have a tight, solid community. And now it very recently has just very recently been announced that events.com purchased Summit Series, which I could not be happier about. I was so lucky to be in on some of those conversations when I was in Summit Detroit. I, of course, couldn't say anything about it. But when it looked like Summit was going to be transitioning their community, all of us were really sad that this beautiful community that we've loved for decades might go away. And one of my friends actually is the founder of events.com, and events.com is based in San Diego. So now all of my potlucks are going to sort of have way more of a flavor of integrating the events.com community and Summit community. I hope. I've been texting everybody about it. But so I will fill you in on the evolution of this potluck series because it just has suddenly become a thing. And I feel like I really have been missing community a lot the past couple years because, man, that first year and 4 months at least of just plowing through and working all day, every day, I didn't even tell my friends that I was living in San Diego again because I couldn't drive like 20 minutes to go to someone's house. I couldn't take off an hour to go have a lunch with like really good friends, friends I've known for decades. And now I get to see my friends on a regular basis and I get to go out to dinner on a regular basis and I get to host potlucks on a regular basis again. It feels so lovely to have community again, and I'm really excited that I get to be creating that in San Diego and LA again because I just have been desperately, desperately missing community these last few months. So anyway, I'm excited to be getting back into the community space. It's super fun for me. It's my favorite thing to do is to host people and to connect my friends to each other. And I'm really glad that we have the level of stability that is coming in to Sticker Junkie to where I now actually have time to do that. But when I tell you, hosting stuff like that is also beneficial to Sticker Junkie because when somebody shows up at one of my potlucks and they're the chief marketing officer at a Fortune 1000 or they own a chain of like 20 dispensaries, I'm like, yo, hey, how's it going? Bet you buy a lot of stickers. Sure would love if you bought those stickers from me instead of whoever the fuck you're buying them from right now and then get them integrated into my companies to purchase from us. It's a very seamless thing. It's not salesy at all. It's just like, hey, you're here. You like coming to my things. You own a company that buys promotional items. I sell promotional items. Let's go. And it is really exciting to be envisioning like the future and be planning for the future. And on that note, next week we will be bringing you a Sticker Wars episode with all of the wildness and intrigue of the $42 billion sticker space. Oh man, so much going on there. So you grab your wine, grab your popcorn, and I will bring all of the tea next week on Andrea Lake 101, The Making of a Billionaire.